Greetings. 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 Greetings to you all. Greetings to you all. We're just connecting to the Galaxy Afui.net. Just give them a moment. We'll be shortly transmitting via Galaxy Afui. Let's get that resolved first of all. I believe we are now connected to galaxyafui.net. And let's get this show underway. Good morning to you all, and thank you for your listening ear, as Chief Mubarawa might say, on the radio, and of course for you taking the trouble to now receive this program via Facebook, YouTube, and the new platform is Mixcloud. Welcome. I am the Motivator, usually alongside Lady Chelsea. On this occasion, she's not able to join with us on this occasion, but she will be with us next week, I'm assured. Okay. So don't you worry, she is well. She is well. So let's get the show on the road, shall we? Let's get this show on the road. Now then, let's get all the other features of the show up and running. Here we go. So I'm the Motivator, usually alongside Lady Chelsea, but the meaning of this show is that we translate our words into action, motivate you to action. And remember, success is ours for the taking. Remember, success is ours for the taking. It's in our minds. It's a mindset. That's why these shows are important. So let's begin. First of all, let me give praise and respect to Iron King, who of course has taken us from night to day. I say praise to you, Iron King. Thank you so much for your absolute determination. Yeah. But most especially, I need to give praise and thanks to the Galaxy management, beginning, of course, to Chief Mubarawa, previous guest of his show only a few weeks ago, the inspired founder and leader of galaxyafui.net. Praise be, my chief, praise be. I want to give praise, of course, and recognition to Elder Erakute, the doctor Abu Ratata. And of course, to that stalwart pilot on this station, who's been here for more than 35 years. To Nicol, the most royal. Recognition to you, Nicol. Recognition to you. But I want to give a special and really roaring recognition to the solution finder, that wonderful Empress Shanice, yeah? A member of the Galaxy Management and a stalwart, a solution finder. I don't ever hear her complaining. What she's focused on is solutions. Outcomes. Because success is ours for the taking. Praise be, my Empress. Praise be. Normally at this point, I've talked to our wonderful, dear me, here we go, Lady Chelsea, but you're not here with me today, so I'm doing a solo run. So it's just me for the next 30 minutes or so. But nevertheless, let me press on. I want to recognize the positive response I received to last week's show, you know. I want to recognize that outstanding sister, okay? That outstanding sister, the very first time, I believe, on this station, or very first time for a long time, let's say that way round, on this station, we had a sister, yeah, an empress of sorts, who was a clear representative of the Muslim community. Okay. I want to recognize her and give praise to her. Okay. Yeah, Haja Sadat Okatende, yeah, the chair of the Southwark Muslim Forum, the first woman chair of the Southwark Muslim Forum, okay, and a proud member of the Old Kent Road Mosque here in Southwark, London. We are going to work with them, ensure that the millions they will spend to rebuild that mosque, they will obtain those resources and they will build the mosque, not only for worship, but for the wider community. I want to give praise to her and her strength. And I hope in a future show that she will return with the imam of that mosque. So we can really rap, we can really dialogue, we can discuss the issues that are affecting us all, not just people of faith. I look forward to it. And I give praise to Sadat. I give praise to you. I give praise to you. Thank you. Thank you. I also, of course, want to recognize those who've been listening, okay? Those who listen and learn from the guests we've had here in the past, okay? And we've had some wonderful guests who've inspired, guests who've demonstrated how to resolve problems, guests who've just simply been an example of ordinary people engaged in an extraordinary act. This is ordinary people, yeah? I want to give praise to you all. I want to give praise to you all. But I also want to give praise to the young man who queried, yet another person, who queried why I devote 10 minutes or so, possibly 10, 15 minutes to discussing our health and well-being. He queried on the basis that, you know, we've got fantastic genes and we don't need these health messages because these were other people's messages, meant for other people. I say to that young man, one of the advantages of my age is that I've been through your phase. Being in, I'm strong, powerful, nothing can get to me. Yeah. Yeah. No, I'm from Jamaica, and boy, we believe so. Let me tell you so. But of course, that's just propaganda. We are human beings, as vulnerable as any other human being. Okay? And it's so important that at no point do we forget that we are but human beings. And as such, we are liable to all the maladies, the viruses, the illnesses that might befall any human being. So it's mission critical, I say to you all, that we take care of our minds, bodies, and souls. So I will continue to give these health messages, but ultimately I say to you all, seek professional advice. What I say to you today is but general health messages. Your health messages will be given to you by the doctor, the specialist that you go to, you trust, and you receive such information from. Mine, it is common sense health messages. And if I'm wrong, I invite you to call in, tell me what I'm doing wrong and how I can improve. I'm going to give the number out now for those of you who are so minded. But keep this number with you, because this number is what I will use throughout the show. The number to call, those of you who wish to give health messages to me and the wider community, call this number. Here we go. 0208 133 5616. I say again, for those of you who are so minded, 0208 133 5616. And if you're overseas, of course, you just take off the first zero and it's +44 for England. Okay? Love to hear from you all, but I will give out those general health messages. So I begin with sugar. I simply say to you, I ask you to consider the amount of sugar you're ingesting into your bodies. Why? Because we in our communities, wherever we are, except in some part of Africa, of course, we are exposed to far too much sugar in our diets, in the foods that we consume. Okay. As a result, across the Caribbean, here in Britain, I don't know about the rest of Europe, but I can only surmise, and I know but in the United States of America, amongst our communities, sugar, or indeed diabetes, is running at extremely high levels, higher than the general population, because we consume far too much sugar. Doesn't affect you today, doesn't affect you tomorrow, doesn't affect you next week or next month or next year. But over a period of 10, 20, 30 years, in some cases much shorter period of time, it has an adverse effect on our bodies. So I say to you to consider the amount of sugar you're ingesting. Do you need those 3-4 spoons of sugar in your teas and coffees? Is it right for you to consume those so-called soft drinks? I call them harmful drinks that we give to our children, and some adults consume in large quantities. Soft drinks, that's just a marketing gimmick. I call them harmful drinks, okay? Because with the amount of sugar they contain, it's simply syrup flavored. It harms our bodies, undermines our ability to produce, undermines our ability to create insulin, with the consequence, often our bodies suffer. So I ask you to consider the amount of sugar that you're ingesting. Think about it. And if in doubt, speak to your doctor, your personal physician. Similarly, I ask you also to consider the amount of salt that you're ingesting into your body. Do you really need to add all that salt to your food as you cook? Look closely at the contents of food that you buy from the shop, particularly those ready-made meals, okay? Consider how much salt you're ingesting. Again, another typical illness from salt, of course. Of course, many of you be aware, is hypertension, hardened arteries, and then leads on to heart conditions, hypertension or high blood pressure, hardened arteries, yeah? I ask you, please, to consider the amount of salt that you are ingesting. And if in doubt, speak to your doctor or to the nutritionist that you know, someone who you know and trust, who has access to your medical record, very important, and therefore understands what you are particularly vulnerable to. I also ask you to consider the amount of fat you're ingesting, either from meats or other products, okay? Because that is another source of clogging up our arteries, yeah, causing high blood pressure and heart conditions, and a whole range of other conditions doctors will tell you, okay? I ask you to consider the amount of fat you're ingesting. And indeed, carbohydrates, all of these flour-based products, all these white root products that we eat in vast quantities. In other words, wheat and those yams, those potatoes, all those white things. What it contains, carbohydrates or starch. We ingest it, and our body converts it into fat, and this fat that accumulates around our organs. Yep. Doesn't happen today or tomorrow, next week or next month or next year, or even in 10 years. It has a cumulative impact over time. Of course, I could carry on and identify other foods which we must consider very carefully about the quantities. But what I am clear, and what the nutritionists and doctors will tell you, is that you must consume or drink the right amount of water each day, between 2 to 3 liters, depending upon your size and body mass and so on. If in doubt, speak to your doctor. Ask your doctor, for your height and size, what is the ideal amount of water you should consume each day. Similarly, want to positively encourage you all to reduce your meat intake, but up your vegetable and fruit intake, okay? Vegetables, fruits are a critical part of who we are as human beings. We are genetically programmed to consume fruit and vegetables of all manners. We are genetically programmed. Those are the ideal food for us. But running alongside that, of course, it is so critical that whilst you're taking care of your nutritional intake, you also take care of your wider body by exercising. It is critical, no matter what your age, to exercise. And if in doubt, seek help, seek advice from learned, trusted, trained individuals, okay? My doctor would tell me that I should train for at least 30 minutes per day, at least vigorous training, run hard, so you sweat, yeah? You racing your heart, raising your heart rate, yeah? It is mission critical to promote a healthy living so that you can avoid much of the maladies. You're boosting your immuno response at all times, yeah? So critical, absolutely critical. And of course, as Brother Kwame in Nottingham reminded us, it is critical that you take care of your spiritual health as well. Raising your energy levels through meditation, taking care, of course, of our wider mental health. Yeah. It is critical. And if in doubt, I say again, I cannot employ you sufficiently, seek professional advice. It's not from YouTube, okay? And it's not, I can assure you, from any presenter here or anywhere. Go seek advice from a trained professional, someone you can trust and someone who's suitably able to give you such advice. Don't take it from me. Seek professional advice. Mine is but general. Specifically for you, go see a professional. And once you have the nutritional, the psychological, mental, and spiritual advice, and you also take care of your physical bodies, then you're on the road to maintaining a long, healthy lifestyle. Yeah, one where you boost your immune system every day, one where you feel good in yourself, one in which your spiritual feelings are powerful, one in which you can be happy at all times. That's all we want from you. That's all we want. That's all we desire, that you are happy at all times. And smiling, I'm told, is therapeutic. Anyway, there you are. That's enough of the health messages. I hope and implore you, if you're hearing this message and you're in doubt, seek professional advice. That's all I say to you, because we want you to remain healthy. We want you to remain healthy. Now then, and I hope that other pilots here on Galaxy Radio and other stations across the country will regularly give out these general health advice to encourage people to remain healthy. Remember, I've spoken to people in their 60s, 70s, 80s, and 90s who exercise and are very careful for what they ingest in their bodies. And those who ignore such advice are the ones who are most likely to fall to these maladies. It's your choice. It's not for me to impose or to force or compel. Your choice. Praise be. So let me move on now. Let me move on. Given the health advices, and now let's want to move on to another section, which is regular. Now, if we don't have Lady Chelsea, we're not going to do the children's section this week, but I'm really looking forward to hearing from young people who can answer our questions. Hopefully she'll be back next week, and we will do the children's section, okay? But whilst that's not going to happen this week, I want to further give recognition to a number of past contributors who have made a positive contribution to this show. I want to, and I hope he doesn't mind me doing this, I want to recognize Chipa Kombabai, the founder of this station, of course. I want to recognize him because those of you who listen to that particular show will recall that I suggested that there are a number of improvements we could make. For example, this show, not only is it going out via galaxyafiwi.net, the radio, okay? So you can go to that website, or indeed, better still, you can go to the station via the Zeno app. Okay, and you put in galaxyafiwi.net, okay, you can get through to the station, and it's a very consistent signal via the Zeno app, okay, and I would strongly recommend that you do so. Those of you who are in receipt of my marketing that we send out about each of these shows will know that in each of my marketing, I include a link to the station, okay, and you'll therefore find that link to the radio listeners, and you'll click the link and you're able to go to the radio site. And similarly, you can also do the same via YouTube, the Motivator show, DE space Motivator show. Similarly on Facebook, and as of this week, we are transmitting via Mixcloud as well. And again, those of you who are in receipt of our marketing will see that there's a link to each of those platforms in that link. Okay, so please use it and spread the words. Okay, We've got a steady increase each week that goes by in the number of listeners to the station and indeed to the show. And I hope that's because the word is being spread. Remember, this is the Motivator show where we translate our words into action. Okay, so I want to give praise to him because not only was he good to his word, immediately we set up a little group, and that group enabled us our first big task was to ensure that at the turn of the year, okay, a special show was carried out, okay, and that involved a number of presenters from the station, led ably by the solution fighter Empress Shanice, and that was a wonderful show. I want to give praise to all the contributors and of course, all those who listened to that special show. Okay. I hope the next stage, and we need to now keep talking, will be, of course, encouraging all of the pilots on the station or the station itself to be able to simulcast across the various social media platforms so we can optimize the number of listeners that tune in to Galaxy Afiwi, okay, .net. I look forward to that happening, and I anticipate that will happen in time. I know he's a man of his words, okay? I want to give praise to his works in Sierra Leone and the Galaxy School in Sierra Leone. Let me give recognition to the great works that is going on in Sierra Leone. Of course, Chief Akababai is a chief that emanates from Sierra Leone. Praise be, my chief. Praise be. We look forward to other great works from you. I want to give recognition to him. And I'll just spend one more minute. I also want to give recognition to another past contributor to the show. Now, this particular contributor, who I wasn't able to mention on the previous week, appeared on the show in July of last year. His name is Professor Hannington Mubarawa. Okay? He is the author, the architect, if you like, and we can talk about architecture later on in this show, of the Rapid Africa Plan. If you put his name into a search engine, look for Rapid Africa Plan. And I believe Africa was with a K as opposed to a C. Okay. He is a man who we should give recognition to. It is critical that Africa receives the inward investment, and that not just money, but money is important, but those Africans worldwide who could make a positive contribution to the economic revival right across the African continent, and indeed the Caribbean. That is a good purpose, a good reason for being. Because whilst we here in Europe have all the privileges and the wealth and indeed the comfort, okay, it is no good to us if it's just us, is it? So I say to you, that is absolutely where we should give a small amount, if not a large amount, if not the entirety of our personal wealth, to see to it that the countries of Africa receive the inward investment, both in finance and skills, and in determination, in our collective creativity, to see to it an economic revival across the continent. Okay? Because if we don't do it, who will? Huh? I ask you. Okay? I ask you. So I want to give praise to Professor Hannington. Okay? I give praise to him and the Rapid Africa Plan. There's a website you can go to. You can make financial contributions. If you engage them via the website, send a message to them, they will happily engage you. It is a worthwhile cause. Okay? I repeat, it is a worthwhile cause. All righty. Now then, I now need to move on to the next section of the show. I've said last week that this month will be devoted to our women. I've said previously, my early entrance into public life was really getting involved in my children's school. They both in the Parent-Teacher Association, then subsequently on the Board of Governors. Okay. What I noted that the majority of teachers were women. What I noted, curiously, that the majority of school governors are men. Particularly white men, I might add. I just got to say, white men. Okay. And the majority of teachers were white women. In an area where we are a significant proportion of the population. And in both schools that my children attended, the majority of students were of African heritage, either directly from the Caribbean or indeed from the continent. It's the most curious environment to find myself in, particularly going back all those years ago, that the schools themselves, when compared to national norms, were grossly underperforming. We're the ones, we the people are the ones with the power to effect change. Let me say that again. It's we the people who have the power to effect change. Want to be clear that change is necessary. Okay. And I can tell you, for one, and I know there are tens of thousands of men and women like me with this attitude, there is no way I was going to allow my children to go to a school that was underperforming and thereby would grossly undermine their economic and therefore academic potential. No way. Change was going to happen. I pause at that point because I want you to absorb what I just said. You've got to be audacious. I know it can be unnerving for many, okay? But you must accept that if we are to improve our situation, we must take control of the reins of influence and power to ensure those changes are meaningful and sustainable. I need to say that. Because, of course, there are many of our people who engage in different sectors of our lives who have the same attitude, and that my guest today, most certainly someone with those qualities. Okay. I won't call her name just yet, but let me just allude to the subject matter. She is involved in architecture, design of those buildings, those places where people reside. Okay, she is someone who's demonstrated a natural genius. She will never admit it herself, mind you, but let me assure you, I've had the pleasure this past few days to investigate. And she is a genius par excellence, par excellence. She will not call herself a genius, but let it be in no doubt in your minds that genius exists amongst our people. I'm sorry, let me turn this off. Sorry about that. Genius exists amongst the African population above the norm. Let me say that again, because this is a statistical fact. Genius exists amongst our people above what is average across all peoples across the world. We are a people of natural geniuses. I'm not just saying that just to boost our egos. It's simply a statistical fact. But we are also a people where genius is I repeat, underdeveloped. You can be a genius and still believe you're dunce. Yeah, that's the mindset. And that's what these schools encourage and were encouraging in our children. Not to be academic, not to be thoughtful, not to be inquisitive. Okay? But my guest today is an example of a natural genius with a strength of character of 1,000 men or more. Okay? And I do not say that lightly. I've had many women who are of similar caliber on this show. Okay? So what I'm going to do, as a precursor to her arrival, I'm going to play a video, okay? And this video will provide an opportunity for you to appreciate what I mean. Because this particular guest is someone who I can absolutely relate to. Dogged determination, clarity of thought, a sense of her history and proudness of who she is and who she wishes to be. Her infectious personality, infects the young to strive to achieve. Give confidence to her peers, a natural leader. So what I'm going to do, I'm going to initiate a conversation shortly, but I want you all to hear this video. Watch this video depending on where you are, okay? Her name is Elsie Owusu, and we will hear from her live shortly, okay? But I want to begin now.
So recently, it was my great pleasure to be invited to do a talk at a space called WeWork in Waterloo, which is a new workspace. It's a lovely design, fantastic views, and you realise what a privilege it is to live in London with its culture and its diversity. The compere, nice man, Marcus Fairs of Zine, and I say that because I need him to publish my work, no, not really, said, "Have you ever experienced discrimination?" And I looked at him and asked him how long we had. And he said, less than an hour. So I thought that an anecdote about a conversation that I had with an eminent architect in 2015 would probably do the trick. She looked at me and she said, "Elsie, you know I'm a salsa dancer, don't you?" I said, "No, I didn't." "Well, I am," she said, "and I'm a very good one." "Right. And you don't know how embarrassing it is for our profession to be associated with institutionalized discrimination. I'm a salsa dancer, and I dance with black men. So how can I be racist?" So when I picked my jaw up off the floor, I realized the huge lack of understanding of the difference between systemic discrimination and personal racism and how it works. So let me start by telling you a little bit about where I came from. I'm also from Ghana. Thank you. And I lived there till I was 9 years old. My father was a diplomat posted to London by Ghana's first president, Kwame Nkrumah. We lived in quite a nice house, and as you can imagine, in the Gold Coast in the 50s and Ghana in the early 60s, not everyone did. From a young age, I was conscious that my life was very different from the lives of people around me. And at that time, in Ghana, it was very common for people to build their own houses, and my grandfather was a contractor. So growing up, it was natural to think that architecture could be a route to helping people. And when I was about 9, I decided that's what I wanted to do. By the time I came to study architecture, my family had been settled in London for a number of years, and I considered Brixton to be my home. One day, during my early studies, I took my portfolio to an elderly mentor. At least I thought he was elderly. He was actually 47, for some advice. He looked at it and he got very excited, and he said, "You must apply for this college." But then he added something which I'd never forgotten. He said, when you go for your interview and they ask you what you want to do with your degree, don't tell them you want to stay in the UK. He said, tell them you want to go home to Africa and practice there. If you tell them you want to stay here, they'll start thinking in terms of you taking jobs from local architects. He meant well, and I tried to argue that home was Brixton. But then I did what he'd recommended, and I got in. But unfortunately, he was right. That story and the original one says a lot about attitudes which are still all too common in institutions which govern architecture in Britain today. British architecture is dominated by men of a certain age, race, class, and colour. Many of them bring with them attitudes and biases from their generation, which includes gathering round the TV for the black and white minstrel show on Saturdays, and love thy neighbour. And those attitudes end up shaping our profession. They're still shaping our profession today. As a result, today's architects are not representative of the population in the UK, never mind in London, and there are not nearly enough women. Fewer than 1 in 5 architects is a woman, 1 in 5. And there are not nearly enough so-called minorities. Today, the population of this country is said to be about 13% black, Asian, and minority ethnic, or BAME. That 13% is actually from the last census, about 8 years ago. So it's probably higher than that now. So to represent the people who live in the buildings and use the buildings we design, you would hope that there would be a minimum of 13% BAME representation, as well as nearly half the 50% women. But it's not even that. For BAME, it's only 6%. And you might hope that figure's improving, but it's not. Between 2011 and 2014, the number of architects from BAME backgrounds fell, and it fell by a lot. And it's been stagnant since then. So the question is architecture serious about developing a pipeline for the brightest and the best? Because if it was, architecture would look like the British Olympic team. I believe that the pipeline bringing young people, women, and people of colour and working class students into my profession is fundamentally broken, and it must be fixed. Architecture in this country must get serious about bringing talent into our profession. There are many reasons why the pipeline is broken. To qualify as an architect, which is a 7-year course, you have to do 3 years of undergraduate study, and then a placement in an environment which gives you the opportunity to get practical experience. Then you have to do a master's before you can qualify to register as an architect. Any aspiring young student might expect that this works a bit like a conveyor belt, with each section leaving you more qualified than the last, and with your teachers pushing you towards the next stage. That's how it's supposed to work, but it doesn't. Some schools will help you find a placement to give you the work that you need. They'll give you connections and introductions and encouragement. Others don't. One young black student, Amira, explained what happened to her after she graduated. I started sending out my CVs, she said. I've finished my undergrad, but I soon found out that it was actually a lot harder for me than for anybody else. I couldn't get any responses back. Everyone else was getting work. They seemed to be fine. But I knew that my work was definitely as good, if not better than theirs, and this is coming from someone who felt not very confident. So she'd hit her first problem. It's not good enough to be good enough. You have to know the right people, and the right people have to know you. As she put it, you need patrons, mentors, connections, people who know things about the industry. And when she realized that, she changed her strategy. She made a point of networking, and I'm now proud to have her as my mentee. The more industry relies on personal connections for advancement, the more likely it is that unconscious biases will exist. The reliance on connections means that the pipeline we rely on to bring talent into the profession sets more store by strong handshakes than by the strength of your portfolio. Anyway, Amira was about to discover her next problem. Around about the same time, she read an article by a black undergraduate who said that he had changed his name on his CV because he had, in quotation marks, an ethnic-sounding name. So she began to wonder whether it was her name that was the reason she couldn't even get a call back. Never mind getting discriminated against by anyone in the room, she said. I couldn't even get into the room to be discriminated against. And once you realize that, you start to take matters into your own hands, she said. Another friend who had an English-sounding last name changed her name around and sent out her CV with her English-sounding name being most prominent, and she got better traction that way. She wasn't even using a false name because it was her real middle name, but, said Amira, some people feel that's dishonest and they won't do that. What does it say about our profession that people feel they need to misrepresent themselves and who they are in order to get a fair chance? What message are we sending to young people about our values, about whether we value talent and hard work? Then there's a question of cost. To become an architect takes a minimum of 5 years study, as I've said, 2 years work experience. That's expensive. And then you have to do the trips abroad, which are compulsory. So a trip to Barcelona or Berlin might cost you anything up to £600 or £700 for a few days. And once you leave, you're looking at a salary of 18,000, and that's not a lot of money, especially when you've worked for 7 years. And the course costs 9,000 a year, so some undergraduates leave with debts of over 100,000 at the end of the course. So these are not the words of someone who is sanguine about making their way into a profession, but so many young people are really committed to architecture, and we have to give them credit for that. Architecture today is an international business. The more experience you have, the more work that you're likely to get. So that brings me to the question of the Royal Institute of British Architects. The good news is that RIBA, as we call it, is changing. And I've been a trustee at RIBA for many years. I stood for president, as the compere said, in 2018, and people keep saying, you were the losing candidate for presidency of RIBA. But actually I wasn't, I was the runner-up. He was the losing candidate. And it's an organization that I became involved with some trepidation when I was invited to be a role model in 2014, and I think you can probably understand why. Given the lack of diversity in the profession, we must boost the pipeline, we must boost the pool of talent of diverse students into British architecture, not least because so many students come from Africa and the diaspora to study architecture in the UK, and it costs those students and their families an awful lot of money and heartache to make sure that they can come here and study. So we must do everything we can to make the profession as open to those talented young people as possible. Because most of those young people, when they go back to Africa, are the people who will be designing infrastructure, who will be designing the homes that our continent so much needs and deserves. Since we had a campaign in 2017 in commemoration of young Stephen Lawrence, whose tragic murder was 26 years ago, we have now 10 BAME architects on RIBA Council. So RIBA now has an opportunity to become part of the solution. Firstly, we know that the best way to fix the problem of diversity is not through the same old voluntary approach which has failed for decade after decade after decade. Secondly, RIBA is now tackling the issue of institutionalized discrimination. racism and gender discrimination, not through salsa dancing, as my friend suggested, but through policies and procedures and good governance. We at REBA accredit educational institutions so that students are allowed to proceed from one stage to the next. And that gives us an awful lot of power to help people and to help those institutions to fix the gateways into architecture. We need to change the norms in British architecture so that there is more that we can do. So there's more that we can do for those young people. For instance, we can encourage a culture of impartial, so-called blind recruiting. It's not hard. No photos on CVs. And set tasks representative of the skills that we need to recruit. Then pick the best impartially. Statistics show that this is the best way to find those whose talent aligns with the needs of our profession. Since we want to push against unconscious bias, this is an excellent way to start. We must encourage architecture courses to fund their trips abroad properly, and we have to decolonize the prospectuses and the curricula, so that whatever your background, you can afford and you are welcome in the profession. We must set clear targets to reverse the decline of BAME and female representation in the industry. And we must fix the culture of inflexible working hours, which makes architecture so inhospitable to any architect who dares to have a family life. This is just the tip of the iceberg. If we're serious about developing a pipeline for the brightest and the best, if we're serious about making sure that race, class, gender, and sexuality not only doesn't make a difference, but is actually considered to be beneficial to your experience and understanding of architecture, there are just a few actions that we need to take, and we need to do these sharpish. And this matters. Why? In the end, it comes back to that instinct I had at the age of 9, that architecture can be a way to help other people, to share our privileges, and to make the world a better place for everyone. Unfortunately, we only seem to see things more clearly when things go wrong. Look at the Grenfell Tower and the loss of life. Look at the UK's housing crisis. Look at climate change. As architects, we are involved in leading the design to the next wave of 20th century architecture and infrastructure. How much are we doing as a profession to make sure that when architects are in those design meetings, they grew up in a building like Grenfell Tower? And how many of those architects have a mum or an uncle or a granny who lives in a flat or lives in those buildings that we're designing? Look at the climate emergency and the way that we plan villages, suburbs, towns, and cities. A young female architect I know said to me recently, if you don't have women on design teams, things just aren't thought about. For example, when I think about urban design, I think a lot about how this affects the lives of people. Sometimes, when we're planning spaces, I just want to say, you can't do that. I would never walk down there. I would never cycle down there. As a woman, I have a very different experience of the city. My profession needs to get the right mix of people in its leadership to make these points matter. And if we do that, of course, architecture can be a way of creating massive positive change. In order to help the people who most need support, we need to notice them, we need to recognize them, we need to admire them, and we need to respect them. And that's why diversity in architecture matters so much. Because the buildings that we build, the homes that we live in, the cities that we plan are for everybody. So everybody, everyone, should have a say in designing them. The irony is that if architects really think about diversity and diversifying what they offer people, they'll probably be more commercially successful. The new demand is there for new ways of living, excellent buildings, homes and offices, like the WeWork space I mentioned before. In the end, architecture isn't abstract. It's about enabling people to have a good life. It's about making sure that our homes are safe and enjoyable spaces, that our families are comfortable, that our workplaces are effective, that our courts are designed to encourage us to trust that justice can be delivered there, that our transport systems are working efficiently and welcome us and are easy to use, so everyone can benefit from the variety of life in our cities. And our cities themselves are built for the communities they serve. To do that, you need to involve everyone, regardless, or maybe because of their gender, ethnicity, or social background. And that's what I've been campaigning for longer than I care to remember. And as the cliche goes, we still have a lot of work to do. I still have a lot of work to do. So thank you for listening.
Wow, that was quite something, wasn't it? That was quite something. And I believe we have Elsie also present as well. Good morning, Elsie. How are you?
I'm very well, thank you. How are you?
I'm feeling much better for seeing you, I've got to say. An eloquent and really thoughtful presentation. Thank you, thank you. And I'm so pleased you're able to join us this morning. I see that before I begin my interview, I see we've got a caller already on the line. Caller with number ending 2911. Good morning to you. There are times when they are quiet. Good morning, caller with number ending 2911. If you can hear us. No, that's okay. In that case, we'll come back to you. Speak up if you've resolved your problem. Elsie, again, good morning. Okay.
Good morning.
Prior to the putting on the video, I had to point out to people that my work in researching yourself has satisfied me that I'm able to call you a genius without any hesitation.
Well, I think many other things. Very welcome.
Well, I say a genius, but I pointed out to listeners that in fact genius exists at above average level within our community. It is the fact that it's the education system that undermines the genius, the natural genius that exists within the community. Okay? But nevertheless, let me press on, because I'm conscious of our time, and our time's got to fly by. So, of course, as most listeners here are aware, I'm also a counsellor. Okay? I just happen, here in the bar that I reside, I chair the main planning committee. Okay? And over my time as a chair of planning, we've approved billions of pounds worth of development. Billions of pounds worth of development. But what I'm conscious of in my time in planning, I have not once, I repeat, not once had an African woman, a black woman, present to committee. I've only on one single occasion had an African man make a short presentation, then his other colleague took over. Only on maybe two occasions, a white woman presented to planning committee. In short, 99.8% of the time, it has been white men.
Yes.
Wow.
You sound surprised.
Well, I remain aghast that here in 21st century Britain, that is the case. That is the case. I remain aghast. And as an elected representative myself, change is absolutely necessary. It is an emergency that these changes are arrived at. So as part of the preparation for this show, I noted, first of all, that you are Elsie Owusu OBE. I want to recognize that, first of all. I want to recognize that, okay? And of course, a key theme in that presentation of yours is that diversity matters. It absolutely matters. And of course, I went on in the marketing to point out as part of that creativity response to this environment, you are one of the founder chairs of the Society of Black Architects. Okay. And I've noted in my short time in which I'm doing these radio shows and television shows, as it were, is that we are blessed in our generation, Elsie, to have a number, forgive me, a series of firsts. In this generation, I can point to the first society of pharmacists, for example, I had here on the show. First foundation of carpenters, butchers, and so on, right across the piece. The first. In our generation, we are building the foundations for future success, and you are a part of that infrastructure towards success. I also, Elsie, if I may, before I go into the main part of this interview, I would also give recognition. Not only are you a member of the RIBA, Royal Institute of British Architects, and one of their trustees.
But actually, I was a trustee, and the structures changed, so I became a member of council. But after 6 years, I finally stepped down. I've been given a release for good behaviour.
Well, in that case, I'm also going to include in that case that you are an elected fellow of the Royal Society of Arts.
That's right, yes.
Absolutely. I'm also going to note that in 2014, you were voted African Businesswoman of the Year.
That's true, yes.
I'm also going to note the Recognition Award in 2017 of Woman for Africa.
Oh, right.
Absolutely. And I can go on. There are so many citations attached to your name. Why are you searching?
Research. I commend your researchers.
Inspirational. And I will commend your name and encourage, particularly young people listening, to read, to study the life and times of Elsie Owusu. She is alive right now and able to provide first-hand account. But I want to, if I may, Elsie, want to just continue. I want to focus on a subject which I won't spend too much time on, but I want to touch on. That is an issue which arose only a few months ago, but it's been going on for you for some time. That is someone with your stature, okay, you submit a planning application for a masterful series of homes which are ecologically speaking extremely sound and are centerpiece of what is said in the national framework document, which all planning policies, local plans, regional plans must comply with.
Yes.
You submitted a planning application for ecologically sound, almost futuristic homes, and your application was rejected.
That's right, yeah.
Gosh. But I note in the borough, and I'm going to say the name of Hastings, they accepted similar applications in other parts of the borough.
Yes.
Despite the fact the land that your application resides with is in fact land that could and should be used for homes, and most certainly encouraged to be used for homes that are acceptable to the community and indeed to the borough of Hastings. Yeah. Okay. I was going to relay. I've got the video of your presentation. Okay, I've got that video here. Okay, All right,
That's
but
very good.
I decided I wouldn't play it immediately. Okay.
Okay.
I'm going to ask you just to explain what has led up to the refusal of that application, as much as you're able to describe it to us today.
Okay, well, I will. It's a very long story, so I won't. I'll cut it short. So, the main point for refusal, according to the planning officers, was that the application site is a valued open space based on its social recreational value, its visual appearance, and the adjoining equipped play space. The site is not an open space. The site, my site, is private space, which is currently hoarded off for health and safety reasons. So we fall on that explanation. In addition to that, about 10 meters away, planning consent has been given to developers for 210 homes, to private developers. The site that I own was previously owned by an Asian man. He was turned down. I've been turned down. Since 1980, planning consent on the same site has been given to over 400 homes.
Gosh.
400 homes. The Secretary of State has made a declaration that this site has no significance that would be harmed by development. Therefore, 400 homes have been developed since 1980, but 2 applications by people of colour for some very, very small developments have been refused on grounds which, and following my experiences, I now do have lawyers riding shotgun, are complete. And, there's been, very sad to say, there's been a huge campaign by local people. It's essentially a white enclave. It's predominantly white-owned, developer-built houses. And a minority of the people there have mounted a campaign which I can only describe as racist. Many of the comments put on the website have been redacted because they're abused. And I mean, I could go on, but essentially, I think that the system is open to abuse because people who, as one resident said, we moved out of Essex to get away from people like that, and we don't want them moving in next door. So I paraphrase naturally, but I think it's the equivalent of the old no blacks, no dogs, no Irish being reasserted through the planning system. And this is the MPPF, which you mentioned, is actually a sound document. But unless it's twinned with something like the Equality Act 2010, my fear is that it can be used to enforce apartheid in the planning, through the planning system, and that is a matter.
Let me add to that. And first of all, you're right. Most certainly, my experience in the planning sector, and of course, I'm kind of very rare breed as well as a chair of main planning, I have to say, unfortunately. That is, you're right, it could be used that way. I'm very insistent, I don't know if you watch any of my planning committee meetings, that questions are policy-based and not some subjective opinion. You can express that as part of our debate, maybe, but the questions should be planning-based, and ultimately our decisions should be planning policy-based, and our decisions, therefore, would be sound and objective.
And I do say, Martin, sorry to interrupt, I do have that against the officer's recommendations, one of the very brave, I think, councillors put forward a motion to overturn
the
recommendations and support the scheme, which they liked very much. So actually, we lost the application.
Could you just hold just one moment there, Elsie? Now, caller with number ending 2911. Good morning. Can you hear us now? Or if you can't, if you could put your phone on mute, please, because we can hear you breathing otherwise. Do you wish to say anything? Oh, they put themselves on mute. Go ahead. Oh, I think we've got a caller coming in now. Obviously, let's take the caller, I think. There we go. Good morning to you. You're through to the Motivator show, calling with number ending 7773. Good morning to you.
Good morning, Mr. Motivator.
Good morning.
It's encouraging to have you waking us up, guiding us into the weekend every Saturday morning with lots of enthusiasm and drive. Thank you, sir.
Thank you. I want you to compliment my guest. I don't need to. She is the person that we're here to see. Good morning. Can I have your name, please, caller?
Hi, my name's Lyndon.
Good morning. Yeah, go ahead.
I just wanted to throw something in, add something to what you were saying effectively. The fact that we are what we eat, we become what we eat.
Mm-hmm.
We also become what we think.
Mm-hmm.
So it's very important. You're talking about diet, you're talking about well-being,
mm-hmm.
Being fit and healthy, to exercise, which is part of it. But as you mentioned before, our mental state is very important. But unfortunately, we don't take enough time to sit down and just do work on that.
Yeah.
Deal with it, strengthen it.
Caller, first of all, caller, I'm going to say yes to all you just said. But this portion of the show, I really want to focus on Elsie Owusu, who's one of the, if not the leading architect here in Britain. Okay, we are fortunate to have her with us today, and I wonder if you have a view on architecture and the presence of our people in architecture.
If we look through history, our people, our culture, have been at the base of the master architects, building most cultures across Europe, as you say,
Mm-hmm.
across America. Our influence has been there. But sadly, at the present day, we don't see our young people, the minds, the creativity being expressed in the architecture, the landscape, in the urban landscape that we live and exist in.
Mm-hmm. So, if I may, Corda, let's put that to Elsie as to why that is a prevailing opinion. I know that there are quite a few listeners here, and there are a few of them who might call in who share that opinion. Elsie, what would you say to that? How would you respond to that opinion?
You mean the lack of presence of
Yes.
Black people, and particularly young people, in architecture? Well, actually, there's enormous enthusiasm for architecture in our communities. People do start the course. Many young people start the course, but the rate of attrition is very high, meaning the rate of dropout is very high. So, out of every 100 people, young people who start the course, only one gets through.
Gosh.
So that's on average. That's according to the Rebazone statistics. So you can see that there are what I would call a series of trip hazards, and gateways, and architecture is in three parts. So at the degree stage, there's a fall off. And then at master's stage, there's a fall off. And if you happen to be lucky enough to get through the 7 years, usually 10 actually, to do your finals for entry into the profession, there is another big trip hazard. And the institutions are all aware of this process and the failure rate, and very little's being done about it. So I think that there is embedded discrimination in the system. There is embedded discrimination against women as a whole. And that has improved, so that the demography is that white women are currently doing quite well. Black young people are being failed massively by the system. But that's not to say that things aren't being done. I mean, wonderful institutions like the Paradigm Network of Black and minority ethnic architects. There's Black people in construction, and there's also a wonderful newish organization called Black Females in Architecture. And I just have to commend my colleague Selassie Situfe, who's a founder member of Black Females in Architecture, who's just been awarded an MBE in the honours. So there is progress, but there, as I've said in my talk, there's just such a huge amount to be done. We can really do with a concerted effort from the industry, from the profession, and you know, there's so much talent that lost, not just to the people themselves, the young people themselves, but to society as a whole, because the creativity, as you mentioned yourself, is just vast, you know. So the losses are, you know, it's lose-lose all around at the moment, and the situation could be turned around quite easily.
Thank you. Thank you, Will. I'm going to come back to that. Solutions, solutions, solutions. Caller, thank you for calling in. I won't take up more of your time, but thank you for calling in. That was a very useful question. And I might invite you to call in maybe in 2 weeks' time, in which we'll have a leading African nutritionist here on this program. I suspect that program will be just ideal for you. Okay.
It'll be a pleasure. I look forward to it.
Thank you. Thank you for taking the time to call us this morning. Thank you. Take care. Take care. Thank you. So, Elsie, we were talking about the Hastings situation and the refusal. Can I just ask, are you going to appeal the decision?
Most definitely.
Absolutely.
But in some ways, I think, though I'm very disappointed, I think the whole situation has done us a favor.
Yes.
In highlighting how the system works or doesn't work.
Indeed.
How the pathways to successful development can be used as a process of discrimination. So I'm quite interested in taking this right the way through and using this as a case study, because I think that until we understand how these mechanisms work, we are not going to be able to change them.
Agreed. Agreed. Thank you. I look forward and maybe inviting you back once we have the result of your appeal. Okay. Very important.
That, you know, if I have to go through 10 appeals to get this site through, I do it.
That's what I like to hear. 10 appeals, she said, and I'll keep doing it until we're successful. Oh yeah. Go on.
Yes.
Oh yeah, that's what I want to hear. We'll never give up. Yeah, we'll never give up. So there. So Elsie, why enter the this profession? Okay, I know we've heard it on the video, but you tell us, why come into this profession of all professions? Why?
Well, the reason, well, there's a jokey answer to that, which is
okay.
that when my parents were in Ghana, when we were as a family were in Ghana, it was around the time of independence, when everyone was enthusiastic and optimistic and had faith in politicians. And I thought, that's what I shall do with my life. I shall become the president of Ghana, because
yes.
because that's how you make change. And then the coup started happening, and I realized that there were occupational hazards, such as ending up in prison or losing your life. So so I went to choice number 2. But the real answer is that I've always been interested in art, and my step grandfather was, I now realize, a main contractor. So I think I probably absorbed it in, osmosis through my family. But as I say, I was interested in art. I was good at art, and I enjoyed buildings. So putting all these things together, and I love being with people. My mother always used to say, "Why are you so interested in going to other people's houses?" And I now realise that it was a process of research for later endeavours.
Genius, you see, there you are. That's the sign of a genius. Always inquisitive, always seeking to acquire knowledge and expand your understanding, you know? Oh, yeah. If I may, Elsie, I want to refer to your website. Okay, I did a lot of research and I found literally hundreds of images of your works right across the world. But your website appears to encapsulate a few really good examples of your work. And I'm going to invite you to give us some commentary. Okay, but at the same time, before I start, I'm just going to give out the number again. I'm trying to encourage young people to call in. There are quite a number of young people listening, and I'm going to invite you to call in. I know that Elsie will respond to all questions, and no questions are silly questions. All questions are worthy. Okay, so the number to call, if you're in the UK, it's 0208 133 5616. And you're viewing us via either YouTube, Facebook, or Mixcloud, you should see the number on your screens. Okay, so Elsie, let's go to your website. And if I could bring camera 2 up again, and I want to do this, it was fascinating. You've really been involved in some very prestigious projects, okay? And I'm confident when I say that very few people who are listening to this program now will be aware of your level of involvement or a senior position you've held previously. So I want to make sure this time you gain the recognition you absolutely deserve. So here in London, those who are familiar with London, indeed, will know that we have an interesting transport system, underground service. And one of the principal stations is not far from Buckingham Palace or from Parliament, right in the very centre of the city, is Green Park Station. Please, Elsie, tell us, what is your involvement in the design of Green Park Station?
So I was a partner in a venerable practice called Fielden and Morton, and this was my project as partner in charge. We were appointed by London Underground to refurbish this station, which was known at that point as an Olympic deliverable. Was being worked up for the 2012 Olympics. Many of the stations in London are quite decrepit and don't have disability access. So a selected number of stations were identified by Underground, and a key one was Green Park. So I led the master planning team, co-led the master planning team, which designed and implemented this project. And I have to say that it was a wonderful team, and architecture is a team sport. So I think that I have to give credit to the entire team of engineers and architects and landscape designers. That shot there is landscape design, which was master planned by Katarina Malmberg Snodgrass, an award-winning landscape architect from Sweden. So it was an absolutely joyful experience. And I go there sometimes, and once you finish the project, it's really hard to remember the tough times, and that's a great thing about architecture. It's a residue of happiness.
Let me take you to another example, this one here, which I found fascinating to know that you were involved in some aspects of the Supreme Court here in the United Kingdom. Tell us what you did here on this particular project.
Well, yes. So myself and Hugh Fielden, who's sadly passed away, were co-lead architects for Fielden and Morton. So again, this was the refurbishment of a venerable building, which became the home of the Supreme Court. Previously, the Law Lords were in the House of Lords, and this was a new home for them when the new Supreme Court was being created. So essentially, we took this wonderful old building, which was, in a pretty sad state, and transformed it with my principal role was the interiors, working with artists like Sir Peter Blake, and furniture designers and joiners, all sorts of the best craftspeople we thought in the UK. And as a result, we now have this new home for a new institution. Well, it was new at the time. Old, but it was an absolutely wonderful experience. You know, one of the happiest of my and most challenging of my life.
Very good, very good. Let me just take you to another one. As I said, your website was extremely informative. We have a call. Let's take this call first of all. Good morning, the number ending 3708. Good morning to you. Can I have your name, please? You're through to the Motivator show. Good morning. Can you hear us? There we go. Good morning.
Can you hear me okay? Good morning, my brother. Can you hear me?
Oh, we can hear you now. Good morning to you. Who's calling, please?
Afrikan, and good morning to you and
Thank
for our listeners.
Thank you, thank you.
And,
Did you have a question for Elsie Owusu?
yes, I have 3 quick questions, hopefully.
Okay.
I wanted to first say thank you, my sister, and thank you for the Motivator for doing this show. Great show, very interesting topic. The 3 questions I need. Firstly, for you, brother, my brother on the planning committee.
Okay.
And also, Sister Elsie, have you heard of the, I don't know if you're going to take the initiative party? They're trying to get more Black people to apply for planning and trying to get more Black people to get planning applications.
Mm-hmm.
Because they found that when they apply, they don't, like you've said, that very few of them even put the applications on or come forward with planning projects. But I know lots of Blacks in the industry who actually do big projects and doing very well.
Yeah.
So I'm just wondering if you know why, or they don't seem to succeed. Like
Understood. I think I understand your question. Your question is, why is it that, well, I used the example earlier on that very few of my people make presentations at a planning committee where the decisions are actually taken, okay? And they'll send their white colleagues to present to planning committee. Isn't that remarkable? And I believe you asked the question, why is that? Is that your question to us?
Oh, sorry. I thought you said they send their white colleagues, but it's actually a Black company. I wouldn't sure it's a Black company.
Indeed. I think, if I may, and let Elsa come back in a moment. What we are highlighting that in the architectural business, and indeed in the majority of planning departments across Britain, okay, it is generally dominated by white men. Okay.
Yes, I understand that.
Right.
I understand
Okay.
that.
Now,
yes, I thought you were saying that there weren't Black
contractors. They most certainly are Black contractors. Yeah.
But they use white people to present their application. Okay.
Absolutely.
I can move on to my next question.
Okay, go ahead.
I'm not going to take a lot of your time. My second question is that the government and many parts of the government are in favour of getting rid of the planning department completely. And this would help the Black community greatly. I know that it's a controversial issue. People who are on the more left wing are not in favour of smaller government. But if they got rid of planning to, keep building regulations, or basically castrate the planning department, it would give more opportunities for everybody across the board. And the sister wouldn't have the problem she's having now, where you can say to those who you want to get applications through and those you don't, because I can give you lots of examples where many Asians have got away with murder.
Yeah. Okay. Hold on. If I may, Corda, forgive me for interrupting. I just want to make sure we keep ourselves focused. So you're in favour of abolishing planning departments and replacing them with what?
No, just get rid of planning completely. get rid of planning regulations completely, or at least castrating them to the point where you get rid of 90% of the power they have.
Okay, hold on there. That's fine. I've got that. Okay. Elsie, do you want to make a comment on that suggestion that?
Well, I would just say that as I would point to a similar theory, which was applied to building regulations. I don't know, you probably remember, in the old days, we used to have some people called district surveyors, DS. Mm-hmm. The sort of sergeant major types, you know, who put the fear of God into everybody, and you know, you used to clean up when they came around to inspect your building and make sure everything was spick and span. Well, we got rid of DSs and instituted a free-for-all, so that I can go to any equivalent of a district surveyor that I want to and say, these are beautiful plans, will you pass them, please? And you know, you cross their palms with silver and they'll do exactly that. And I think part of the reason we ended up with Grenfell, because if you take deregulation too far, if you make the system completely open, it ends up being a sort of Wild West, you know. And the people, you know, who sadly died in Grenfell, and the people who have flats that they can't sell because of the design of the exteriors, you know, the cladding and so on, I think is an outcome of deregulation which has gone way too far. So I think there are great planning laws. They just need to be applied properly and without discrimination. And I think if they are properly applied, independently and rationally, I think, you know, the situation would change. It's a bit like having the Race Discrimination Act in the 1970s. You know, there was a huge fuss about it. But if we hadn't had that basis of regulation, we would be a lot worse off than we are now. So I think you need a framework, but the framework has to be properly applied.
I think I'm in broad agreement with Elsie on that. I would say to you, my brother, that whilst I understand that is a nuclear option, as it were, but it's actually taken us back to an earlier experience which we moved away from. We're introducing, he says, democracy into planning and leaving decisions to, he says, elected officials who seek to represent the whole community, not some of the community. So my recommendation to you is that if you're not involved in local politics, consider getting involved in local politics, okay? Because in my experience, this is where you can affect the greatest change for the benefit of our communities. Yes, I'm chair of planning. Yes, I can influence our decisions are taken. Yes, to go back to what else said earlier on, I can ensure that the qualities policy is implemented and is considered in all reports, and both my committee members and the applicants are aware of the qualities policies, how it might affect a planning application. Here in Southwark, for example, all major applicants are required with a commercial scheme to provide at least 10% of their properties at discounted rates. Okay, 10% at discounted rates, so that local SMEs are able to access those new buildings, new facilities. If you are a developer of homes, we insist that at least 35% of those homes must be built at affordable prices, with 70% being at social rent and 30% at intermediate rent levels. We insist that the application of those policies complies with the Equalities Commission's legislation as well. Now, I can make sure that happens. Indeed, the council, through the officers, can make sure that happens, because people like me, indeed, maybe like you eventually, or indeed, if only, like Elsie, are local politicians, and ensuring that local policies are applied equally across the piece. That's how to do it. So I say to you in response, whilst I hear the new...
Can I respond to that, please?
Of course you can. Of course you can.
Okay. What I'm suggesting is not just what me suggesting it. Government has been considering it. And I'm sure Elsie's aware that the planning department is the biggest obstacle to most builders. Most builders have massive problems with the planning department and the complete irregularity, inconsistency in how A may get planning, B may not. And the problems LC's having is the inconsistency in the planning department. But the government's considering it, builders considering it, it's a massive issue that many face. And what they're asking is to reduce government regulation of planning, to allow more of everybody across the board, more of our communities and everybody can get planning without going through bureaucracy. That's the point I was trying to raise about trying to reduce the planning, not more government bureaucracy and more regulation.
I'm going to ask you just to hold that point, and thank you for that. I'm just conscious of time. Can you go on to your third point? Okay. Yeah, go to your third point.
My third point was, I don't know if you're aware of the party and anything they're doing, and if you support what their arguments are. With a brother who was a big builder, who was a successful builder businessman. I just wondered what your opinion was on what, you know, the direction they wanted to do, and as they were trying to influence councils and get council elected and get into the political arena, as you suggest. That was it, and I'll read the slide.
Okay. I think I'm aware of. Again, I want to make sure that the focus of this interview is really on Elsie, but I will just respond for a moment. In my experience, in my considered opinion, third parties remain third parties because very often the two major parties have got a stranglehold over local politics. Okay, but that stranglehold is limited to the communities that are involved in those parties. Now, in parts of London, we are, as a community, nearly half the population. In some parts of London, particularly for the Asian community, they're actually a majority population. So from their perspective, the two major parties are parties that serve their needs because they're able to influence what happened at this local level and then in turn at a national level. It is our community that needs to develop the political acuity necessary to influence the local political parties. And it's not by my suggestion, not by setting up a separate party, because look, the Lib Dems have been trying this for years and they haven't got much, they haven't got anywhere, and there have been hundreds of other tiny parties, they've not got anywhere. We only really have influence if we are involved in the major parties. I've chosen the Labour Party because it possesses the greatest opportunity for change, okay, for social justice. I know many will disagree with me, but that is where I believe the greatest change for social justice is possible. And I also believe that I would not be a councillor, I would not be a chair of planning, I would not have the opportunity to influence what's happening in my locality to the degree to which I have if I were not a member of the local Labour Party. And that does not compromise my position, my principles. What it does, it enhances my position and principles. I'm with like-minded brothers and sisters, comrades in the same party. So I recommend that those who seek to set up a separate party are seeking a path that will only lead to, well, inertia at the end. We want change now. The situation highlighted by Elsie needs to be changed absolutely now. Therefore, we'll use the biggest hammer, which is the major parties, to effect those changes. Okay. I've responded. Elsie, yeah. Elsie.
Martin, if I may, I think that in broad terms, I agree with you, but I would have to point out that Hastings is a Labour borough.
I know.
And you know, these enclaves are within a Labour borough, there are areas like St Leonard's where wonderful work is being done. There are fantastic policies, but the policy mechanisms aren't there for enforcement and implementation. And that is the problem, because when you look at the demography of the officer team, you know, one black planner in a big department where you're handling billions and billions of pounds worth of property and assets is just not, it's not an equal situation. And I mean, I would also say that you have done fantastic work at Southwark and pointing out the situation. And Southwark had a strategy to balance the lack of opportunity. I may say that for whatever reason, when I applied, I was turned down. So, and there were a number of my colleagues who were seen in quotation marks as troublemakers. So I think, you know, this is a problem. High level aspiration is fantastic and we need that support, but we also need mechanisms for making sure that these policies are properly implemented and carried through for the benefit of the people that we're all interested in, which is the wider society.
100%. I completely agree with you. And yes, you're right. The Hastings Council, I didn't say at the beginning, is a Labour-controlled council. I said it was a heavy heart. I'm sure they will see this video eventually, but I said that with a heavy heart. I note that the chair of that particular committee voted to refuse your application. He voted alongside the Conservative hostile councillors on that committee. I note that he didn't ask you, the chair of the committee didn't ask you one question. Okay. In fact, I don't believe the committee asked any questions of you. I found that to be quite astonishing. And as a Labour councillor myself, truly embarrassing exercise. What I noted that committee was very amateurish. Going back to the caller, and therefore I can understand why you would feel, well, scrap it, get rid of it, go for the nuclear option. But what we had previously was worse, okay? Because you gave it to a white person, a white man invariably, and he was God, okay? That was most unsatisfactory, okay? At least here, we can reform, we can train, we can reform. And if people like the caller on the line were to get involved in local politics, you sound like the type of person who could be involved in a political party, but remain centered, know who you are and why you're there, and not get lost in the propaganda that we're always exposed to. Okay, so I want to encourage people like the caller to get involved in local politics, because that's where we can truly affect change and protect the interest of, I'm about to say young geniuses, because you do look very young on the screen at the moment. I've got to tell you, Elsie, the young genius I have in front of me, Elsie Owusu. Okay, let me now quickly continue. I'm conscious of our time. We're almost out of time, but I want you, before you go, I want you to refer to another one of these projects you're involved in Ghana. Okay, let me just bring that one up. Here we are. I think this is one of, yeah, this is one of them. I'm going to bring this one up for you. Tell us what you're doing in Ghana.
Well, this is a rapid transit system for Ghana's capital city of Accra. It was done quite a long time ago, and it currently isn't being implemented. But the idea was that we would set up a transport system, which is actually based on the London transport system, which is considered to be a gold star enterprise, which is based on having vehicles, rapid transit vehicles, which have their own dedicated lane, which run on time and to schedule, which are very nice to use, and encourage people out of their cars and into public transport. So that was the idea. And I, again, worked with a fantastic team of engineers and architects using, you see here, the Kente,
Yes.
which what we were doing is using Ghanaian culture as part of the integration of the rapid transit system into the local economy. It was a fantastic project and had great, I was going to say traction, great interest. But I have to say that I worked on the rapid transit system in Lagos, and that was implemented in double quick time, was incredibly successful. So I say to my Ghanaian fellow country people, Ghanaians, there is always a little bit of competition between Accra and Lagos. And this time, Lagos won hands down.
So, and if I may then, can I ask you to just tell us a bit more about the organisation you founded, the Just Ghana. Tell us more about that and just tell us a bit about that, please.
Okay. Ghana is a way of giving back. Started by myself and my lovely brother Kofi around about 2006, 2007. And what Just Ghana does is it helps to boost the Ghanaian economy by making links between the UK diaspora and Ghana. And the idea of Just Ghana is to increase interest in Ghana's culture and economy, and to act as a conduit for investment into Ghana. So we do a lot of work around arts and education, architecture and health. And one of the interesting projects I see you have there is to work with people in the small scale mining industry to try and, because Ghana used to be called the Gold Coast. Ghana was in fact the basis of the gold standard, and a lot of the gold in the Bank of England comes from the Gold Coast. Yes. But very little of that value is retained in the country. So we are trying to find a way of, instead of having the gold dug out of the ground and shipped to Switzerland, helping local people to retain the value at the point of as close to the mining areas as possible, to boost those communities and to provide healthcare, education, and economic growth for the country. And this is all small scale stuff. I mean, this isn't a gigantic venture. And it started off with my family not buying each other, instead of buying each other Christmas presents, we'd save up our money and send it through Just Ghana to projects in Ghana.
Wonderful.
And to start with, we raised about, pounds, £500,000 between us, which doesn't sound like much, but only $1 or $2 a day. Make a lot of difference to those communities. And this year's my father's centenary, he was born 100 years ago. So we thought at that time, what if there was a young person in that village, the village where my father was born, who with a little bit of help could end up, as he did, going to Queen's College, Cambridge and becoming a diplomat.
Yes.
And we've seen so many of these young people. It doesn't take very long to grow a human being, And we see these young people coming through and becoming designers and becoming engineers and, IT, working in the IT. And it's just such a joyous, magical experience. So I
ask you, forgive me for interrupting. Can I ask you, how can people make contact with you? I've got the website details in front of me, but how can they make contact with you? Because I'm confident by the messages I'm receiving that there's real curiosity to get to know you better.
Well, they can email me, eoauk@yahoo.co.uk.
Say that slowly. Say again.
EOA.
Oh, we have a call. I'll quickly take this call and then we'll go back directly to you. Good morning, caller, with number ending 3348. Good morning.
Hi, good morning. My name is Natasha. I'd like to say thank you so much for having Elaine today. I mean, it's been fantastic. It's amazing. I'm from the Southwark Black Parents Forum.
Okay, welcome. Do you have a question for her? She's still here for at least another 5 minutes anyway. a question for her.
Yes, I was looking at some of the stuff that Eileen had said on her one of her presentations, and I thought it was amazing when she was talking about, you know, architectural designs in demographics that don't actually represent the people means that the architects can make designs without understanding how it may impact on people. And I actually recently did a white collar doctrine to raise money for Grenfell London Foundation, and I know that some of the architectural design in Somerleyton was done by white architects, and also we have some issues with the Aylesbury, where the people who actually designed the buildings hadn't actually had the experience of living in those flats, so therefore couldn't contemplate the types of issues that we're now having to deal with now. In regards to young Black children, sometimes I feel that the aspirations is set a little bit lower because they're not seeing positive role models such as yourself that are not building only in local communities and fighting where they are, but also building in Africa and across the diaspora. So I heard you talk about the 10 years it takes to become an architect. What could we do better to help promote architectural studies to our groups, and what schemes are available?
Let's put that question to Elsie. I wonder if you can help respond to that.
How can we?
Yeah, I've encouraged young people to get involved in architecture, and what are the schemes to enable them to pathways into the profession?
I think there's enormous enthusiasm from young people to get into architecture. I would say don't be afraid to approach the highest levels of the institutions in the UK. The Royal Institute of British Architects has a wonderful scheme for young people. It used to be run by Matt and Fiona, who are now at the Design Museum, but it's there. So call Reba, look on the RIBA website and invite them to come to your school, because they will do that. That's at an individual level. At a different level, I think parents who spot the talent of their children should really encourage them to look at buildings, get them a sketchbook, encourage them to take photographs, and become an architecture enthusiast yourself. Because it's very, very rewarding and interesting, and you'll never regret it.
Natasha, did you hear that?
No, I couldn't hear her respond.
Oh, okay. Oh, why is that, I wonder? There you are.
Councillor Martin.
Not to worry. I'm very keen to interview Elaine if she has the time. We have a piece in the newsletter called Spotlight, where we focus on either somebody from the past, the present, or the future. And we're definitely interested in contacting you. And if you're happy, we'll send you an email by the end of today.
Okay. I've made note of your number, and I'll then put you both in touch with each other. If that's okay, Natasha.
Yeah, that's fantastic.
Thank you very much indeed. Thank you for the call. Thank you for taking the time to call. Thank you very much.
You're more than welcome. Take care. Bye, Elaine.
Bye. Okay. Well, I did want to just quickly, in the last 2 or 3 minutes, just resolve how can people contact you. So your website that I've got on the screen. Let me give out your website address if that's okay with you, Elsie. So it's www.owusu.uk. Is that right? Am I going to have right?
Yeah.
Yeah, that's right. Yep, that's right. Yeah. And of course, Elsie Owusu, if you've used a search engine, you'll see there's mass of information on her past achievements. And I know there are many, many more years than you. There are many great achievements come, Elsie. That much I'm assured. What would your closing words be, particularly for those young people who are thinking about the profession? What are your themes? What are your principles in entering the profession?
Well, I think self-confidence in whatever you do is an absolute prerequisite. But I think believe in your talents and make your talents evident, and aim for talk to as many architects as you can. There's an old saying, a cat may look at a king. So don't be afraid of going to events and approaching people whose work you're interested in. And I think that way you will find mentors and you will find a pathway through. But do feel free to contact me, and I will be happy to give you some suggestions. There are so many talented young people in architecture now. Let's just talk to each other and make contact with each other and find a new way.
Thank you very much indeed. We will most certainly have to do a part 2 following your successful appeal. Okay? That's what I'm looking forward to. Because, of course, this is the Motivator show where we translate our words into action. You've demonstrated the strength and determination that's in the essence of who we are as African peoples. And what I don't want to do ever on these shows is simply recite us being abused, simply recite us being losing, simply recite us being oppressed. I want to relate our successes. I want to relate how we strategize and work together towards a common aim, a common purpose. I want to be able to give light and give promotion to our achievements, the outcomes that make us who we really are as African peoples. We are not oppressed people. That's the mind. We are most certainly not. And what you demonstrate, Elsie, is that inner strength, which I've been doing a series of programs for women, and I've always said that women are the foundations of our civilization. It is upon you, upon your shoulders, that us poor blokes rest upon. Without our women, we would be nowhere. And you are an exemplifying example of why, without a woman, there is no civilization. I honor and respect you. Honor and respect you. And I want you to continue to going from strength to strength. Do never, 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 never think about giving up, okay? Otherwise, I'm going to travel down to Hastings and give you a hard time.
I will. Well, just so you know, I did invite Councillor Roberts and Councillor Maya Evans, wonderful person, and the planners to listen to your show. So I think they might learn something, and we can all work together.
Oh, that would be nice. I just say again, what I was struck by was how amateurish it was. It was truly, truly amateurish. And
they say that. I couldn't possibly comment.
I know you can't, but I can tell them. Okay, and we need to compare notes. These were in the main Labour councillors. Okay, we definitely need to compare notes, because what I saw there in 21st century Britain left me aghast. Okay, so we must, forgive me, we will do better. Elsie Owusu, OBE, thank you for being an outstanding guest this morning.
Thank you. It's been a great pleasure.
Pleasure. Good day to you, and we look forward to your future successes.
Thank you.
Bye-bye. And listeners, were we not honoured by Elsie? Did he not exemplify the strengths of our peoples, dogged determination, never give up? That's what I mean. That's why the women in our community, we men must honour them, treat them with the utmost respect, always. Live up to our obligations to our women. Vitally important. And I'm just truly impressed by her, truly impressed. So I commend Elsie Owusu to you all. Okay, I commend, and I want to thank those callers. Okay, and I know that young people seem to prefer these text messages. Maybe I could get used to using that more often. Maybe in a future show we'll introduce a text line as well, and I'll read out your commentaries. But I do appear to receive on my personal number, which I don't typically read from, quite a few texts, but I don't read them out as a rule. I think we need a separate number for texts, and I will in future shows start to read out texts. But nevertheless, I can see our time is almost up. I want you all to remain strong, never give up, and if in doubt, seek advice. Okay? Remember, seek advice from those who you believe have the strength that you wish to draw upon. And my experience, they will always want to share it because that strength comes from the heart through love. Stay strong, all of you. Remember, success is ours for the taking. I can't take that call. It's nearly 10 o'clock. I'm sorry. I can't take that call, unfortunately. But I say to you all, good day. Stay strong. Blessing to you.